Warmaschine presents the StG-44 First Assault Rifle. The Sturmgewehr 44 is universally acknowledged as the world's first assault rifle. Ask any knowledgeable enthusiast, and they'll tell you it was a revolutionary design that combined the firepower of a submachine gun with the range of a rifle. The common narrative holds that it was a wonder weapon that arrived too late to save the Third Reich, a fleeting glimpse of the future that would inspire the AK-47 and every battle rifle since. This is true, as far as it goes, but it's also a surface-level reading that misses the more significant and, honestly, more uncomfortable reality. The StG-44 was not just a technological leap. It was the physical manifestation of a fundamental shift in the nature of ground combat. A shift that Germany's enemies had already begun to understand, and that Germany itself was just too logistically broken to fully exploit. The lesser-known truth is that the StG-44 was less a decisive weapon and more a desperate admission of defeat. It was, an attempt to solve a manpower crisis with firepower. A crisis Germany had created through strategic overreach and years of brutal, attritional warfare on the Eastern Front. Its story is not one of triumph, but of a military recognizing its own obsolescence and scrambling to re-equip its dying infantry with a tool they could no longer effectively use. To understand the StG-44 is to understand the grim calculus of the late war battlefield, where the lessons of survival were written in blood, and innovation was driven by necessity, not ambition. The German army of 1939 was built around the squad light machine gun, the MG-34, and later the MG-42. The riflemen were primarily ammunition carriers and protectors for the machine gun crew. Their carabiner 98K bolt actions, while accurate and robust, were a secondary asset in a doctrine centered on sustained automatic fire. This worked well in the open, maneuver warfare of the early war. But the Eastern Front changed everything. By 1942, the Wehrmacht was locked in a brutal war of attrition in urban ruins, dense forests, and vast trench lines. The average engagement distance had collapsed. Studies showed that most firefights took place at under 300 meters, often well under. The 98K, with its full-powered 7.92 by 57mm Mauser round, was overkill for these distances. Its bolt action honestly too slow for the sudden, close-quarters fights. The MP-40 submachine gun, firing a 9mm pistol round, provided the volume of fire but lacked the power and accuracy to reach out past 100 meters or penetrate the heavier clothing and light cover common on the Soviet steppe. The Red Army, despite its staggering losses, had already begun to adapt. They flooded their assault groups with the PPSH-41, a crude but effective submachine gun firing the 7.62 by 25mm Tokarev round. It wasn't a perfect solution, but, it put a high volume of lead in the air at close range. The German infantryman, facing waves of Soviet troops armed with automatic weapons, was outgunned in the critical close-quarters fight. The StG-44, firing its new 7.92 by 33mm Kurz, or short round, was the theoretical answer to this tactical problem. It was designed to give the individual soldier a controllable automatic weapon with a cartridge that had real stopping power out to 400 meters. It was a recognition that the era of the bolt-action rifle as the primary infantry arm was over. The development path of the StG-44 reveals as much about the fractured nature of the Nazi war machine as it does about engineering. Adolf Hitler, fixated on offensive power and, haunted by memories of World War I shortages, was initially opposed to a new rifle. He believed the army needed more of what it already had. More submachine guns and more machine guns. He halted development of what was then called the Maschinenkarabiner in 1940 and again in 1943. The response from the Armament Office and the weapons designers is, honestly, a masterclass in institutional evasion. They simply rebadged the rifle. By designating it the Maschinenpistole 43, or MP-43, they made it sound like a continuation of the existing MP-40 submachine gun line. The subterfuge worked. The weapon was issued to troops on the Eastern Front, specifically to the elite Waffen-SS units and other experienced formations, under this misleading label. Its effectiveness in the field was immediate and undeniable. When Hitler finally discovered the deception in 1944, he was furious, but he was also pragmatic. After witnessing a demonstration of its firepower, he reportedly coined the term Sturmgewehr, storm rifle or assault rifle, as a propaganda tool to give the new weapon class its own identity and drive its production. The name itself was a piece of propaganda, a promise of offensive power at a time when Germany was fighting for its life on defensive lines. The StG-44 was a brilliant piece of design for its time, incorporating a stamped steel construction to speed production and reduce cost. But the fundamental lesson of the StG-44 is not about its influence on Mikhail Kalashnikov or the M16. The persistent myth that the AK-47 was a direct copy of the StG-44 is a disservice to both weapons. The operating systems, the internal mechanisms, and the manufacturing philosophies are entirely different. The Kalashnikov was a separate evolution, drawing on different influences and solving different problems, primarily the need for extreme reliability and simplicity above all else. The StG-44 was complex, its receiver prone to damage, and its ammunition, a completely new caliber, created an insurmountable logistical nightmare for a collapsing Germany. The true legacy of the StG-44 is conceptual. It proved that the intermediate cartridge was the future. It validated the idea that the average soldier needed a weapon capable of effective aimed fire in full auto at practical combat ranges. But for the survivalist and the serious historian, the weapon offers a deeper, more cautionary lesson. It shows that technology alone cannot reverse strategic failure. The StG-44 was issued in numbers that never came close to replacing the 98K. It was given to troops who were increasingly young, indoctrinated, and poorly trained. Soldiers who lacked the tactical skill to fully leverage its capabilities. It arrived when Germany had lost air superiority, when its supply lines were shattered, and when its industry was being systematically destroyed. The StG-44 represents the pinnacle of individual infantry firepower in 1945. It also represents its irrelevance. A man with a revolutionary rifle is still just a man, and if he cannot be supplied, cannot be reinforced, and cannot be supported, his weapon becomes a relic waiting to be collected. This is the final, unvarnished lesson of the Sturmgewehr. Preparedness is a system, not a single tool. The finest weapon in the world is worthless without the logistics to feed it, the strategy to employ it, and the industrial base to sustain it. The StG-44 was a glimpse of the future, but it was a future that Germany, through its own failures, had already forfeited the right to inherit. This is War Machine, committed to examining the weapons of war within the full context of their time. If you found this deep dive valuable, please subscribe and share this video. It ensures that these nuanced stories, and the complex lessons they contain, continue to reach those who seek a real understanding of history.